April rain moved down Park Avenue in long silver lines, neon glowing through the puddles outside the Valentine. The supper club was almost empty, just cigarette smoke and gin. A tired trio near the curtain, playing softly for the dim. You arrived around midnight in a pale rose satin dress, hairpin close like movie stars, from old black and white press. No loud laughter filled the tables, no dancing shook the room, only quiet conversations and perfume drifting through. A tenor saxophone sighed low, the piano followed slow, brushes whispered on the snare like rain against the road. Then you stepped beside the microphone and sang in pure 1940 style, warm romantic vibrato, graceful feminine phrasing, every note elegant and fragile. Your voice carried luminous sadness, but never begged for tears, like women singing wartime songs through radios across the years. You leaned gently behind the rhythm, floating soft above the band, holding certain words so tenderly they barely seem to land. The saxophone wrapped around you like smoke around a flame, while every lonely soul inside forgot why they first came. You sang of springtime train stations, gardenias left in taxis, moonlight caught on champagne rings, and lovers drifting past seas. Then near the bridge your lower register turned darker for a line, a velvet ache beneath the sweetness, hidden perfectly in time. Outside, thunder rolled faintly. Inside, the glasses stayed still, and all across the supper club your voice hung warm until the final piano chord faded. The rain softened near the street, and somewhere underneath the night, two lonely hearts still beat. above the boulevard, looked out toward the snow, where headlights crossed the frozen street, slow and gold below. The radiator clicked uneven, curtains moved with wind, and somewhere down the hallway a radio played faintly in. You sat beside the vanity in a pale blue evening robe, brushing perfume onto your wrists, like someone holding hope. No orchestra beneath the ceiling, no crowded midnight crowd, only winter pressing softly against the sleeping town. A hotel station on the radio played a tender swing ballad, violins low beneath guitar, trumpet warm and quiet. Then you began to sing a completely different kind of 1940s performance. This voice sounded satin smooth, softly feminine, and unusually intimate, like recordings made for soldiers overseas late at night. Your vibrato stayed very controlled, barely touching the ends of phrases, giving the song a calm, romantic ache instead of dramatic sorrow. You pronounced every word elegantly, with classic 1940s diction and rounded vowels. But your tone stayed lighter and silkier than the smoky nightclub singers before. The melody floated close to the microphone, almost confidential, as if the listener sat beside you in the dim blue room itself. Outside, snow touched the fire escapes, a distant taxi passed. Inside, your voice wrapped around the violins like perfume around glass. You sang of winter station platforms, gloves forgotten on cafe chairs, the loneliness of hotel mornings and lipstick left upstairs. Then near the final refrain, your voice rose softly into a delicate high note. Not powerful, not theatrical, just luminous enough to stop the room. The radio orchestra faded slowly. The snow kept falling through the dark, and somewhere beneath the city lights, two separated hearts stayed marked. I left my heart in the taxi, driver, keep the meter running. I don't wanna go upstairs. Every room I ever slept in still remembers him somewhere. Downtown glowing red through rainfall, people laughing under lights, while I wear yesterday's lipstick into another lonely night. He used to hold my hand on Broadway, like the city belonged to us. Now the windows shake with traffic, and strangers ride the bus. Oh, don't drive faster. Take the long way around tonight. Let the neon blur together till Manhattan disappears from sight. I got his photograph still folded inside my winter coat, and every time I try to leave him, his name catches in my throat. The radio plays dance music, but I can't feel the beat. I just hear tires through the water and my heartbeat underneath. Maybe tomorrow I'll forget him. Maybe spring will change my mind, but right now every rainy corner looks like somewhere we left behind. Driver, stop beside the river. I wanna watch the bridges glow, because if I go home too early, I'll finally feel him gone. Sunday morning, touch the curtains in quiet shades of cream, dust dancing through the apartment like fragments of a dream. The city hadn't fully woken, only distant church bells rang, and somewhere down the hallway a faucet slowly sang. You stood barefoot by the record shelf in one of his old shirts, pouring coffee into porcelain while the room still carried hurt. Not sharp heartbreak, not dramatic loss, just the soft empty space two people leave behind. A record spun with gentle static, acoustic guitar and piano. No orchestra, no trumpet cries, only warmth moving slow. Then you began to sing beside it, completely different now. No smoky torch club vibrato, no elegant ballroom phrasing, no deep midnight sadness. This voice sounded young, natural, almost folk-like and intimate, with little cracks left untouched. You sang slightly above the beat, giving the melody a floating openness, and your higher notes turned airy and fragile without becoming theatrical. Certain words broke softly apart, like thoughts arriving half finished, while your breathing stayed audible, close against the microphone. The sunlight climbed across the kitchen, touching yesterday's wine glass, and every little note you sang felt temporary and honest. Outside, a newspaper hit the doorstep, a bus sighed down the block. Inside, your voice and the guitar kept the apartment warm. Then halfway through the final verse, you laughed quietly at yourself, forgot one line, hummed the melody instead, and somehow it made the song more real. The record reached its final rotation. The needle whispered low, and Sunday morning carried on without needing to know. You never said goodbye at Penn Station. You just fixed your coat and smiled, like people do when they've already left, long before the final mile. The loudspeaker kept on talking, trains kept rolling through, porters carrying strangers' luggage under lights washed blue. I remember your gloves on the ticket counter, the rain caught in your hair, and the way you looked beyond me, like your heart was somewhere there. The orchestra inside the station cafe played a slow romantic tune. Violin, piano, muted brass, drifting underneath the room. Then I started singing quietly, but completely different once again. This performance sounded warmer, older, and emotionally resigned, like a woman remembering love years later, instead of living inside it. The vibrato came slower and wider, classic early 1940s radio style, but the phrasing stayed unusually calm, almost maternal in its softness. I didn't chase dramatic notes, I let the melody settle naturally, giving every lyric the feeling of memory instead of heartbreak. Some lines were nearly spoken gently, others opened into rich, warm tones, like old vinyl records glowing softly softly in apartments lived in alone. The rhythm stayed steady and graceful, never pulling too hard against the band, creating that timeless wartime ballad feeling people once danced to holding hands. A soldier near the lunch counter listened. A waitress stopped pouring tea, and outside rain blurred Manhattan into silver memory. I sang about train smoke at sunrise, scarves forgotten on hotel chairs, people loving each other deeply without ever being prepared. Then near the ending, my voice lifted into one soft, sustained note, not sad, not broken, just accepting what already happened. The violins faded underneath it, the station lights dimmed low, and somewhere beyond the darkened rails, you disappeared into the snow. The Lexington Hotel grew quiet after 2:15. Only elevator echoes and the city washed in blue. Rain clung softly to the windows, silver against the night, while chandeliers above the lobby dimmed their golden light. You sat beside the grand piano in a long champagne silk gown, reading yesterday's love letter upside down. No dancers crossed the marble floor, no glasses rang with cheer, only a bartender in suspenders, drying crystal near. The house orchestra had gone home, except one aging pianist still awake, playing slow romantic chords for memory's sake. Then you began to sing true, authentic 1940s jazz romance, classic velvet vibrato, elegant wartime phrasing, the kind once carried through ballroom broadcast. Your voice sounded refined yet aching, smooth as smoke through candlelight, with graceful falling endings and notes that shimmered soft and bright. Every lyric moved unhurried, wrapped in old Hollywood sorrow, like a woman still in love tonight, though morning waits tomorrow. The pianist followed carefully, barely touching every key, leaving space around were singing like waves around the sea. Outside, taxis hissed through puddles. A distant train rolled slow, and somewhere beyond the rooftops, the moon hung pale as snow. You sang of ballroom photographs, perfume left on collars, summer evenings near the lake, and unanswered midnight callers. Then near the final refrain, your vibrato thinned with tenderness, not from weakness, from remembering too much happiness. The piano faded into silence, rain softened on the glass, and for one suspended heartbeat, the whole hotel stopped to pass. He only called after midnight, never while the sun was up. Always when the city windows started filling up with smoke. I knew the sound before the ringing, that long distance tired tone, the kind that makes your heart stand up even when you're better off alone. My little apartment near Canal Street shook when the trains went by, and every time his voice went quiet, I could hear the wires cry. He'd say, "Baby, you still awake?" Like he didn't already know, like I wasn't sitting by the telephone every single night in a robe. I should've hung up, I should've laughed, I should've learned somehow. But lonely women in rainy cities don't make promises they keep out loud. The radio whispered from the kitchen, soft trumpet, lazy snare, while cigarette smoke climbed slowly through the cold apartment air. Then I started singing with the record, but this wasn't Smooth Torch singing anymore. His voice sounded restless, wounded, and emotionally unpredictable, like somebody trying not to cry and failing a little. Some words came out sharp and bitter, others nearly disappeared. Certain notes broke halfway through, like the feeling got too near. I didn't stay sweet through the melody, I let irritation live inside it. Little sarcastic laughs between phrases, tiny pauses filled with silence. The rhythm stumbled emotionally on purpose, pulling against the band, making the whole performance feel like love slipping through your hands. Outside, sirens crossed the avenue, and neighbors slammed the door, and still I sat beside that telephone, wanting him to call once more. Then near the ending, the orchestra dropped out, leaving only upright bass and rain. and my voice alone in the darkness, repeating his name. The ocean liner left at midnight, under clouds in harbor rain. Suitcases rolling over wooden docks, fog wrapping every name. Women waved white handkerchiefs, sailors shouted through the steam, and jazz spilled from the first-class lounge like something from a dream. You stood alone beside the railing in a long cream traveling coat, watching New York disappear slowly beyond the harbor boats. No tears running down your makeup, no dramatic farewell scene, only quiet eyes reflecting all the places you had been. A small ship orchestra kept playing inside the glowing room. Soft piano, low clarinet, and brushes smooth as moon. Then you started singing with them, but unlike every song before, this voice sounded airy and aristocratic, like old European cabaret singers performing softly aboard luxury liners before the war. The tone stayed light and velvety, with delicate fluttering vibrato, and your phrasing floated elegantly above the rhythm instead of sinking behind it. You pronounced certain words with subtle continental softness, giving the song a foreign romantic mystery, as though love itself belonged to another country long ago. The melody moved like ocean water, gentle and constantly flowing, while your higher notes shimmered faintly like light on dark waves below. Passengers near the staircase quieted, champagne glasses stopped mid-air. Even the orchestra followed you carefully, like dancers afraid to break the spell there. You sang of Paris winters, letters lost at sea, the loneliness of hotel balconies overlooking memory. Then near the final refrain, your voice turned almost transparent, soft enough to disappear into the harbor fog itself. The ship horn sounded low afterward. Rain touched the Atlantic blue, and somewhere beyond the dark black water, the night carried part of you. Keep your matchbook in my coat. I keep your matchbook in my coat. Bottom pocket near the seam, smells a little like your cologne, and nights that never leave. The bartender at Roseland knows me, pours bourbon without asking why. Says I stare too long at couples whenever slow songs arrive. You used to dance behind the laughter, pull me close when brass bands played. Now every saxophone in Manhattan sounds like promises we made. The band tonight is playing softly, just piano, bass, and drums, and every little brushstroke rhythm feels like where you're from. So I start singing with the cigarette smoke, but this voice is different again. Lower, drier, more emotionally contained. Not dramatic heartbreak, not trembling vulnerability. This performance sounds emotionally guarded, like someone refusing to fully break in public. The phrases stay cool and controlled, almost detached at first, but underneath the restraint, there's exhaustion trying to surface. I hold some notes very straight, without vibrato at all, then suddenly let warmth appear on one unexpected word. The rhythm stays lazy, and behind the beat, heavy like sleepless mornings, giving the song that classic late night bourbon and regret feeling. Nobody in the lounge moves much, glasses shine under gold light, and somewhere near the coat check girl, someone quietly starts to cry. I sing about winter taxis, lipstick on hotel cups, the strange little objects people keep when love gives up. Then near the final verse, my voice softens unexpectedly. Not weak, not broken, just honest for 1 second too long. The drummer stops using brushes, the piano turns almost blue, and all across the dark roseland, the room slowly falls into you. I still dance when nobody's there. The ballroom on Madison Avenue, closed sometime last spring. Now dust sleeps on the chandeliers where couples used to swing. The mirrors lost their silver shine, the stage curtains fell apart, but every Thursday after midnight, I still unlock the dark. I wear the same black evening gloves, the same perfume you knew, even though the orchestra has long since vanished too. There's only one lamp near the piano, one player, and the sound of winter wind outside moving through the stair. And I start singing to the empty room, and this performance changes everything again. No polished torch club glamour, no fragile trembling heartbreak. This voice sounds deeper, slower, almost hypnotic, like a woman dancing with memory itself. The phrasing stretches unusually long, dragging behind the music in a dreamlike way, creating a floating, haunted rhythm instead of a normal jazz cadence. Certain notes dissolve into breath, others suddenly bloom warm and low, giving the melody an eerie romantic intimacy, like forgotten ballroom ghosts listening close. The record player crackles underneath me, piano distant and warped, while upright bass notes echo slowly through the abandoned hall. I sing about empty dance floors, shoes left beside the band, the strange way love survives inside places no longer standing. My voice stays calm through the sadness, never crying for sympathy, just circling gently around the melody, like smoke around old memories. Then near the final verse, I hum instead of singing words, letting the melody drift half finished into the chandelier dust. Outside, snow gathers on the sidewalk. Inside, the old room glows blue, and somewhere across the empty floor, I still dance once with you. September settled over Brooklyn in faded amber haze. Laundry lines above the alley swaying through the gray. The corner bar on Linden Street stayed open through the rain, its windows glowing quietly against the passing trains. You came in near 11:30 in a dark green wool coat, carrying a paperback of poems pressed close against your throat. No glamorous ballroom entrance, no diamonds catching flame, only tired eyes in autumn air, and someone you still blamed. A jukebox near the cigarette machine played an old romantic tune. Soft piano and brushed cymbals turning slowly through the room. Then you began to sing beside it, a completely different 1940s jazz feeling now. No dramatic torch club power, no smoky nightclub seduction. This voice sounded dusky, low, and intimate in a neighborhood jazz way, like small Brooklyn lounges hidden beneath train tracks. Your vibrato stayed subtler, shorter, almost disappearing on certain notes, giving the melody a more natural realism. You bent into some phrases quietly, sliding between notes instead of holding them straight, creating that weary late 1980s after-hours style, found on forgotten shellac recordings. The bartender lowered the newspaper, listening without a word, while rainwater crawled down the windows and distant train whistles blurred. You sang a rooftop summer's ending, coffee cups left cold at dawn, the ache of hearing old footsteps long after someone's gone. And near the bridge your lower voice turned, almost speaking soft, as though the song had grown too personal to fully sing across. The jukebox hummed into silence, rain drifted down the block, and somewhere underneath Brooklyn, a lonely heart forgot to stop. We missed the last train back to Harlem, somewhere after 2. Standing underneath the station clock with nothing left to do. Your tie was loose, my hair was falling, rain slid down the tracks, and all the city sounded empty once the final engine passed. We laughed at first, the way tired people do when they know the night's gone wrong but don't know who to blame it to. The diner stayed open near the river, coffee burning on the stove, neon buzzing through the windows, like a tired kind of hope. You talked about California, I lied and said I'd never leave, both of us pretending softly at things we didn't quite believe. Then I started singing by the counter, and this time the voice changed completely again. No polished jazz club glamour, no elegant radio vibrato. This voice sounded intimate and hushed, with a smoky low register, inspired by small underground blues blues lounges, almost like singing directly into someone's ear. The notes slid slowly into each other, loose and unhurried, more emotional through texture and timing, and through dramatic volume. I left entire moments unfinished, letting silence answer certain lines, giving the performance a late-night realism, like two exhausted people sharing secrets. The piano player followed quietly, barely touching the keys, while upright bass notes hung in the room, heavy as sleeplessness. You watched me over the coffee cup, like you already knew. The missing trains and loving people often end the same way too. And near the final chorus, the melody dropped almost into a whisper, my voice turning dark and close against the sound of rain on glass. Outside, dawn touched the station rails inside. Nobody moved, and somewhere between the unfinished chords, we both understood. The cafe chairs were upside down, mops dragged across the floor. Outside, the rain kept arguing with the grocery store next door. You sat alone beside the jukebox in a wrinkled ivory dress, one heel hanging from your fingers, hair falling from the mess. No diamonds, no hotel lobbies, no ballroom chandeliers, just coffee gone cold at midnight and a jukebox full of years. The cook was counting cigarettes, the waitress killed one light, and somebody near the window coughed into the night. Then softly through the speaker came a slow, forgotten tune, one of those sad little records people only play past two. And suddenly you started singing, but not polished, not glamorous, not carefully performed. This voice sounded broken open, like a woman too tired to hide anymore. You sang some lines almost flat, then suddenly full of ache, letting certain notes crack naturally instead of smoothing every break. Sometimes you rushed ahead emotionally, sometimes the rhythm dragged behind, like your heart and the music couldn't fully stay aligned. Your breathing stayed inside the recording, your little laugh stayed too, making the whole thing feel less like singing and more like surviving through. The cook stopped counting cigarettes, the waitress leaned on the bar, even the rain outside slowed down against the diner cars. You sang about cheap apartments, lipstick stains on coffee cups, loving someone selfishly and never quite giving up. Then near the end your voice dropped low, not elegant, not cinematic, just painfully human for one line. The jukebox clicked, the room stayed still, and nobody looked at the time. The blue room at the Savoy, the blue room at the Savoy dimmed its lights around 1:30. Waiters folding linen slowly, ashtrays full and glasses dirty. Outside, Manhattan shimmered through the misty autumn rain. Streetlights painting crooked gold across the avenue again. Waited near the bandstand curtain in a midnight velvet gown, one sapphire clip inside your hair, long gloves slipping down. No applause remained to greet you, no dancers crossed the floor, only the low hum of the city beyond the revolving door. A trumpet player near the stage started one last melody, slow and sweet and heartbreak soft, like waves against the sea. Then you entered with that unmistakable, authentic 1940s jazz club voice, silken vibrato, smoky elegance, every phrase carrying romantic poise. But unlike the previous songs, this vocal style leaned more intimate and breath close, like late night nightclub recordings pressed onto shellac after midnight shows. Your higher notes came thinner, almost glowing around the edges, while your lower register stayed warm, like candle wax and old messages. You stretched certain vows luxuriously, then released them with delicate restraint, giving the melody that timeless torch singer ache without complaint. The pianist barely touched the chords, leaving space around your tone, as though the entire room understood you were singing for one alone. You sang of blue hotel stationery, perfume caught in winter scarves, the ache of hearing footsteps fade beneath sleeping boulevard cars. Then midway through the final verse, your breath trembled for a second there, not enough to lose composure, only enough to leave the room bare. The trumpet answered softly after. Rain touched the Savoy sign, and somewhere deep inside the darkness, your heart stayed out of time. When the radio turned low, the apartment over Riverside looked out across the tracks, where freight trains moved like lonely thoughts, too heavy to come back. Rain rested on the window ledge, street lamps burned below, and every room along the block had finally gone dark and cold. You sat beside the radio in a cream silk evening gown, one shoe left beside the sofa, hair slowly falling down. No crowded clubs, no dancing smoke, no strangers calling names, only midnight pressing softly against the window panes. The radio played a tender tune from some hotel downtown, a small orchestra drifting slow with muted trumpet sound. And then you softly joined the singer, not modern, not sharp, not bright. Your voice carried that true old Hollywood warmth, deeply feminine and light. Rounded vowels, gentle vibrato, elegant vintage phrasing, like records spinning slowly in wartime radio stations. Every line arrived gracefully, smooth as satin gloves, holding tiny traces of heartbreak underneath the love. You sang carefully into the silence, never forcing any note, letting breath and melody stay close against your throat. The orchestra on the radio faded, but still your voice remained, floating softly through the apartment like perfume after rain. A neighbor somewhere down the hall paused beside her door, listening to your distant singing through the hardwood floor. Then near dawn the station crackled, static filled the air. You hummed the final line alone while brushing out your hair. Morning slowly touched the curtains, silver blue and thin, and all the city seemed to hold the sadness you kept in. The post office on Cedar Street closed before the rain began, leaving yellow light reflected across the empty tram. You stayed inside the corner cafe, near the fogged up window frame, turning one sealed envelope over and over again. No music from a crowded ballroom, no laughter from the bar, only teaspoons, coffee steam, and headlights moving far. A woman at the counter softly played old records near the sink, slow piano with faint guitar, too quiet almost not to think. You rested your chin upon your hand and stared beyond the glass, watching strangers hurry home while midnight slowly passed. Then almost without meaning to, you started singing low, but this voice felt tender, close, and full of held back glow. Not smoky heavy, not whisper thin, not playful or detached. It carried the warmth of someone still loving after the fact. Your phrases moved very slowly, careful not to break, like fingers touching photographs that time refused to take. You let silence stay between the lines, never rushing toward the rhyme, giving every word the feeling of rain suspended in time. The waiter stopped collecting plates to listen near the hall, while outside tram cables hummed against the wet brick wall. He sang as if the room were empty, as if nobody remained except the person in that letter whose name you never said. Then near dawn you sealed the envelope, held it one last while before placing it beneath the cup with one exhausted smile. When morning finally touched the street, the cafe lights turned pale, and somewhere in your coat pocket stayed the letter never mailed. The hotel lobby after midnight smelled of roses, dust and rain. Bellhops whispering through marble halls while taxis crossed the lane. A pianist near the staircase played softly for no one, slow chords drifting upward long after the crowd had gone. You descended wearing navy silk and gloves the shade of pearl, moving with that quiet elegance old Hollywood women carried through the world. No dramatic diamonds blazing, no laughter loud and bright, only tired beauty and perfume lingering through the night. Inside your purse, a telegram stayed folded near your hand, unread since California, unsigned at the end. The pianist changed the melody into a tender 1940 standard, strings joining faintly through the radio behind the hotel counter. Then you began to sing a true classic late 1940s torch performance, smoky silver vibrato, velvet diction, every phrase wrapped in romantic distance. Your voice sounded lower now, more intimate and world-weary, like someone who still believed in love even after it disappeared quietly. You held the quieter notes longest, letting them hover in the air, giving the room that aching warmth only vintage nightclub singers bear. The night clerk stopped turning pages, a porter lowered his eyes, even the chandelier light seemed softer beneath your slow goodbye. You sang of ocean trains and postcards, winter ships and candle smoke, the fragile ways people stay haunted by words they never spoke. Then near the ending your voice fell almost to a velvet murmur, as if the song belonged more to memory than performance. The piano faded underneath you, rain touched the revolving door, and somewhere in your purse remained the telegram forevermore.